Most of our bats in North America are insect-eating bats, but we didn't know exactly what they were feeding on. We knew what direction they went to. We knew what kind of habitats and roughly what kind of insect compositions were in those areas. But Gary McCracken from the University of Tennessee is one of the scientists that did the bulk of the research on Mexican free-tailed bat diets. He had some fantastic field surveys where he would go and put these acoustic microphones, bat detectors, up on weather balloons, and he would launch them into the areas where the bats were known to fly off at night. And then when the weather balloon would come back down, he would retrieve the bat detector and download the recordings that it had made, and he would find feeding buzzes up at thousands of feet above the surface of the earth. And it turned out that the bats were feeding on these large migratory moth populations that were hopscotching into Texas from the Rio Grande Valley every spring. And the bats would exit their caves, and they would converge on these areas of large moth migrations. And there was just this fantastic feeding frenzy going on up there. And then with the advent of DNA barcoding, he was able to identify DNA signatures from certain pest species like the cotton bollworm moth and the corn earworm moth, and found these same DNA fragments in the guano of the bats back at the roosts. And so he could prove without a shadow of a doubt that the bats were not only foraging up at these high elevations where these moths were known to occur, but that their diet actually included these moths. And so his studies have been replicated across the country and in foreign countries as well. In Australia, they've done some of the same type of experimentation. And it's been determined that these bats are contributing enormous amounts of economic services to the croplands across the United States, not just in Central Texas, because they're the first line of defense in eliminating a lot of the moths that would make it into the grain belt of the Midwest and up along into the Canadian border. But a lot of these moths aren't making it up there because the bats are intercepting them beforehand. So they are contributing billions of dollars annually to agriculture in the United States and into other countries where similar species occur, mainly because if you don't have the larvae of these moths on your plants, you don't have to spray pesticides. And if you don't have the moths that are making it past the front lines of the Mexican freetails in Central Texas, then you don't have to worry about the moths reproducing and laying eggs on your plants. So it's this really wonderful, wonderful synergistic relationship between the bats and the farmers that, because they're doing everything they do under the cover of darkness, has been largely unknown for centuries.